Do you continue to receive threats today?
Yes, I do. Every time someone gets up and says I'm responsible for the death of people throughout the world, the death threats go up. When the data show that hydroxychloroquine does not work, and there are people saying, oh, it does, I'll give it to people, and we know it can be hurtful to them, then when you're attacking what I'm saying, that the science shows it doesn't work, and the science shows that bleach doesn't work, that when you attack that, you really are attacking science, because science has shown that it doesn't work. That's what I meant when you're attacking me, you're attacking science.
So here he is lying about, just blatantly lying about recommending lockdowns. Now he's standing by him again because he's being questioned by Congress. Now because he what?
Schools, if you had to do it all over again.
Well, you know, again, it's first of all, I didn't recommend locking anything down. You're asking me questions. You're talking about the CDC is the public health agency. I recommended to the president that we shut the country down. And that was a very difficult decision.
Hey, pull that for a second.
Because I knew it.
Scott, will you search, what was that guy's name? James Redfield? Who used to run the CDC? Because that guy came out and said later he thought it leaked from a lab.
Robert Redfield.
Robert Redfield. Thanks. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Oh man, I'm just, I keep thinking, I don't know how we're going to get to the end of the show because I keep thinking of cool clips to pull from the past now.
What do we need from Robert Redfield? What do you need? You need anything specific?
Well, like when did we first talk about Robert Redfield?
Oh, Robert Redfield.
I was over here searching. What did I search? I searched Moderna, and
I have episode 22.
Oh, this is the one where you guys found the Milken clip. It's in that one. I was searching, gene therapy and Moderna. I found this juicy clip of Ryan when he was on the show and we were talking about it. And if I go back to the results, look how many times we talked about Moderna gene therapy. I mean, you're not going to see that on CNN or MSNBC or CNBC or NPR. We were talking about probably before even people got jabbed up with it because we're like, Moderna's got the patent since 2012. It's a rigged game. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just celebrated my 4-year podcast anniversary on Friday. So the 7th was
your podiversary?
Podiversary, yeah, dropped our very first episode 4 years ago on Friday. And episode 2, the second podcast we ever did, was on the childhood vaccine schedule and just vaccines in general, because we knew that was June 2020. We knew that it was all roads were leading to the vaccine. And we were like, all right, folks, get ready.
Now, before we all roads led to the vaccine, there was that part where Tony Fauci said hydroxychloroquine was hurtful. I mean, it's like one of the safest things you could prescribe just in case it was working, right? It has like Nobel Prizes and stuff. He said science had shown it didn't work. I don't know that's some reason to let people not have that treatment or to make them feel like they have to order strange things from other countries. But I thought I would go over here to my browser and search on my Twitter chloroquine, because before you get to hydroxychloroquine, you get the chloroquine. And I was doing this research way back in March and April of 2020, because when you look into, oh, look, they delete posts. When you look into the history of coronavirus, right, here's the ones from March, going back March 23rd. These types of things in the early 21st century, chloroquine is a potent inhibitor of SARS coronavirus infection, right? And it's a 2005 NCBI. Like, I'm posting in April, I'm like, hey, look, this thing that's going around that broke out from the lab, Didier Raoult did the original research, and this is an early treatment. Now, right around this same time, Elon came out and he said chloroquine is kind of toxic, to your liver or something like that, but hydroxychloroquine was a safer alternative. And I had found research papers to that effect. So I was all over this back when you weren't allowed to talk about it. And all the evidence is right here. I mean, Didier Raoult, he also used remdesivir, right? But they also knew back early in the 21st century that it caused liver damage after about 6 weeks. They made remdesivir standard of care during the pandemic, knowing it was going to kill people if the virus didn't, and then they died with COVID. Okay. So all the evidence that you would ever need, you could go to court on this. This is a good timeline. Okay. This is what was going on back then. And they haven't censored that yet. But if you, as I've done on the show before, if you search pandemic on my page, they scrubbed all those references I showed you guys last time. But getting back to the point, remdesivir did damage. So they recommended it standard of care. Ventilators and intubation, instead of low volume, high oxygen, low volume, they did low oxygen. High oxygen, low volume is what they should have done. They did the opposite. So they blew people out. They all died. No one was coming off the intubation or the ventilation successfully and coming back after that. So that was a standard of care thing too. And they put, because there's footage out there of people's families that the guy walks into the hospital and then they intubate him and then he dies and it's like, sorry, he died from COVID. That was standard of care killing people. That was not necessarily the bioweapon even killing people, right? So when they have a standard of care that causes a worst case scenario and they won't let you get early treatments, any other type of therapeutics, because if they would have said hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin were available, they would have said pull the emergency use authorization on the mRNA gene therapy. The only way they could get the liability for it was emergency use. So in these situations, it's good to put context back, because if you just showed up and listened to Fauci this week, you probably feel bad for the guy. And you probably feel like maybe he should find a radio host to blame and get $1.5 billion too, because some people, that he like, so he's like a capo who's like out there waging war. And then he's like, some people sent me some messages. Right? You killed people's grandmothers. You prevented people from going to their families' funerals. You made people fucking die alone, and people were afraid to go in and give them treatment and give them food and give them water. And people around the world died like that because of the antics of some people. Like if Fauci hadn't got together with Bill Gates in 2010, and you could search this in Clip Genie, he said something about they had a thing, it was on the Gates Foundation website, decade of the vaccine. He and Billy Boy. 10 years right before the pandemic kicked off, a surprise pandemic that Fauci told everybody was coming because he's a good surprise guy. He's also such a clever criminal that he keeps people around him who brag about how good a criminal he is. That dude's like, Tony's really good at going around the FOIA. Yeah.
Man, that's brutal. Yeah. I mean, so much. I mean, you basically just summarized the whole thing right there. And like, even in those congressional hearings, that's one of the things I do take issue with was they're like, COVID killed more people than the Holocaust and all this stuff. And it's like, man, like around that time, like it was like, I remember it being like, where's all this? Like, I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I don't know anybody that's dying from it. I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm editing a book right now for a friend of mine who was a medical coder, an insider, whistleblower who was on Alex Jones recently, actually. She's a friend of mine from out in Oregon. Her name's Zoe Smith, and she just wrote a book called My Life in the Thrill Kill Medical Cult. And so it will be published soon. We're working on the editing, but she has a Substack, zoe.substack.com. Go check it out because she's got a lot of writings and her detailing about it. And, going through the book, it's her inside perspective of like in the beginning, the hospitals were empty. And so these hospitals run their business. And so they needed more money to fund their operation. And how do they do that? They bring patients in, they get all this money from the CARES and the PrEP Act for COVID patients, COVID cases. And then of course, the big payout for ventilating and intubating and ultimately killing patients. So, there's that whole line of logic. And then there's the whole statistical cover up. Like we were watching this in real time where like you can go to the CDC website right now and you can even go back to 2020 and look at this where like basically the flu season disappeared. There's that color coded chart that shows the entire United States. And it's like during the peak of flu season, the whole country's like red and purple, which means the maximum amount of flu cases in like the winter of 2019. Fast forward to the winter of 2020. And it's like, it's all green. There was literally no cases. We were looking at county by county in Oregon, and it was like one case of influenza in the entire county of Portland, of Multnomah County, like where Portland's located, like one case. And then when it's like the peak of flu season, it's like, well, they shift all the cases. Like, so between the hospital protocol and the lying through statistics, they were able to fabricate this whole thing. And so, I feel like, like we were talking about that debate or conversation, whatever, between Dave Smith and Cuomo last week. One of the things that Cuomo was talking about was like we should have a some commission that looks at it. And like, obviously the government investigating itself isn't going to work, but I'd love to do that. Like if we could have like a legit sanctioned commission to look into this stuff and really uncover everything, that'd be great. But it's up to us in the meantime to just keep hammering this stuff. So yeah, I mean, the whole situation of, I just don't like the way they phrase it, where COVID killed all these people. It's like, no, it was the lack of early treatment. It was the hospital protocol, and it was, the fear and all these other components that came together that caused the amount of death. And then, and then the doctors that were utilizing these other early treatment protocols, they didn't lose any patients. That nobody should have died. Nobody should have died at all from whatever the hell that thing was. Nobody should have died at all. And so, there's so many like crimes against humanity along the way. It's like a series of crimes against humanity in the most horrific way possible, but it's not what we're being told. And it's not even the way they're characterizing it in these hearings. So
no, definitely far from the truth. And that's why it's good to have a continuous time capsule through all these events, because you could go back like this. And I interviewed Dr. Andrew Huff, who's Peter Daszak's partner at EcoHealth. He wrote a whole book about it. We have a whole interview about it. Boy, where would I find that interview? Oh, thank you, Clip Genie. Here's at least mentions of the book, and that I would have to click through, because if you go and search, you find like 10 results, because we've talked about it a couple times. But you would readily be able to find which one of these has the interview with Dr. Andrew Huff, and now it becomes like a game. Which one? Turn over the cards. Let's see where it's at. But that's good. And also, I don't know, did AZT kill a lot of people?
Totally, dude. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you go like in my t-shirt shop, I have a shirt that says Fauci gave us all AIDS, which was a reference to that back then, where it's like, the whole AIDS HIV thing is so crazy, but like it's a tongue-in-cheek joke where it's like, his choices and his actions or inactions allowed this thing that we call AIDS to proliferate, right? And then now we have the vaccine acquired immune deficiency syndrome. So I have another shirt, a newer shirt that says Fauci gave us all AIDS again, as in gave the entire world AIDS. He gave the entire world AIDS twice in one career, which is very impressive.
VAIDS. Well, I mean, but let's step back, because Fauci, he doesn't deserve credit alone. And if we were giving out awards, we would also want to go to our next Clip Genie search, which is Albert Bourla. Now, let me say something here about social media. I searched the other day because like Steve Kirsch or somebody was like, hey, did you know that Bourla did something that had to do, right? And I was like, bro, we talked about that 4 years ago. Like when this was coming out and he's like going to be in charge, we're like, who's Bourla? So Albert Bourla became famous because he worked for Pfizer. And there's a video. We've played the video on this show, and now we're probably going to be able to find it. But first, we did find the Milken clip from earlier, so we're not going to keep teasing you. We're actually going to show you clips. So Bourla is in this video, and he's in charge of a whole segment of research and development for that company. That's how he becomes CEO, because he handled the project I'm about to tell you. And you're not going to believe it if you don't know about it, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Albert Bourla, he had a problem. Male pigs give off testosterone and it taints the bacon. And so these people who sell bacon can't use that meat. And they're like, hey, what if we could have something so it doesn't get tainted? Then we could get this extra meat out of the hogs. So Pfizer said, we could help you out. We make vaccines for animals. And Bourla, he pioneered a solution for this, and it's called Improvac. So I went to Twitter and I'm searching Improvac, Bourla. These things have all been scrubbed because they caught on to what I was doing. Somebody at Pfizer's PR team or something. It's awesome shit. And so it's hard to find. But in Grand Theft World with Clip Genie, those clips still exist and Elon Musk can't delete them. So while Albert Bourla was working at Pfizer, he got it right. And what did he happen to develop? He developed chemical castration for pigs. And then he became in charge of the world's largest gene therapy experiment done in the open public with exclusive rights over Israel. He needed to make sure. So, first off, there's like a thing there because you're not supposed to work with pigs. But if you it's not kosher is what I mean. Here's a guy who just got done working with pigs and their ball sacks, basically how to chemically shrivel their ball sacks so they can get better bacon. That qualifies him for like a no questions asked deal for a whole population of people as a case study that could only accept his product. from on high. That was just a crazy situation. So Albert Bourla, I think, he probably deserves more recognition for that early work in chemical castration, because the people running the pandemic, they definitely are not eugenicists who are looking for depopulation strategies and how can we get this thing into people and turn it on later. They're definitely not looking for that, right? They were looking for how do we get people to take the thing that's the real thing, and we'll make them run from the bioweapon. Then they'll want the antidote. It's like the first scene of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, bro. And they're like, good enough for us. And then they went off and they did it. And then they told us about it. So let's go to that Milken clip, because this is Fauci on stage telling us about it as they're doing it. Ha 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 ha. And they laugh. Thank you, LD, for finding this. And thank you, Scott, for finding it. They both found it.
Did you want it from Clip Genie or the event clip, and where?
Well, I mean, I want to brag that we found it through Clip Genie, but if you got a better copy, whatever the best copy is for the audience.
Well, I mean,
the Clip Genie will show it from where you guys have already played it, so it might be a suitable timestamp already in there. I don't know. You know what I mean? If you're trying to find like a timestamp within like the YouTube video. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't look at it. That was my problem. I got excited because I thought we had found the Milken clip, but I need to click into.
I found a mention of it. I think we already played that.
Oh, you found the mention?
Hold on.
Thought I saw it on screen.
Okay, so it's where it says, why don't we blow the system up, is where that clip starts in the Clip Genie thing. Why don't we blow the system up? Sorry, I should have specified.
Cool.
Okay. There's a lot. Hang on.
So I'll just show you. I'll do it live. So I'm copy that link for that search, because that's what's got slid in the DM.
I got it
right here. You got it? All right. Now you got it twice.
So I was originally searching the word. I was originally just searching the word egg, because I know they mentioned the word egg in the clip, right? Eggs,
and fertilization.
Eggs, the only,
yeah.
Yeah. So I looked up the word egg, and so I was browsing through all the episodes where you mentioned eggs, and I got a lot of egg-shaped penis references. So we all know what that was about. Yeah.
I don't know who was talking about that. Was that a Vosh clip?
I think it was Epstein, right? It's the Epstein reference, but it was like multiple. It's come up several times in the show. Let's just say, apparently.
Epstein, Weinstein. All right, so
Weinstein, yeah.
Weinstein is a Harvey Weinstein reference.
No, dude.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein is the egg-shaped. Weinstein, apparently, he's like a hermaphrodite or something, or it's like some horrific thing. I don't know. Yeah, that's what it is.
Well, that's what Hollywood's for.
Yeah.
All right, so the Milken clip, is that something that you have your hands on, LD, or I can just?
I'm waiting for it to load.
All right, cool. And this is alpha. This is alpha product, or is this beta? What do you consider this, Scott? This minimum viable product that we're showing off.
I mean, it's alpha status, I feel like, for what it is. Like,
I have a speaking of which, here, let me do it like this. All right, dude. So, like, for instance, use case as a user, I want to clip clips out of this episode, right? Next week. So can Jerry put this in the Clip Genie and then have the whole transcript and then select parts and make clips from that one transcript?
Yeah. So what you would do is, let me just see here. So you just go.
That's okay. That's good enough. And then my next question is, if I highlight this part and this part, will it jump the text in between, cut those two parts together? So when I render a clip, it's like this part, and this part. And if not, can Dean do it?
That's a good question.
Because that's the next use case after it's like, I have the episode in front of me. Can I take 3 words from the clip and then 100 words from the comment and then make a clip and it jumps the things in between?
Ooh,
and if not, this is like real time feedback.
Yep.
That's the next thing that people are going to want to use in that.
I'm going to add it to the list. It saves editing time. Yeah.
I know, dude. Jerry's getting excited about it over here. I didn't want.
Yeah. So what you do is I just when you're on like the screen where it shows the transcript, right to the left of the clip icon, there's that little like triangle looking thing that just gives you the full transcript, I believe, when you click on that.
Cool. All right, so if I click that, it does. It gives the whole transcript. And then if I highlight a part, how do I highlight?
Just straight highlight. I think you use straight highlight, and then
so this would be the clip, and then I also want this. So it won't let you highlight, but if I hit shift, let's try that. No. If I hit control.
It wasn't letting me either. Yeah.
Hold on, control. Okay, so that's the thing. If I could hit control, highlight two different areas, and it cuts it together inside one clip with cuts, that's like,
Yep.
that's
All right.
all right,
Bought me
cool,
time.
cool. Yeah, nice. Nice.
So that's loaded.
Anytime we can buy a little time is a good thing. All right, so let's go ahead. This is coming from what episode of Grand Theft World are we in?
113.
We're going all the way back to episode 113, and let's see if we can get mention of the Milken clip at least that exists.
Those dudes on stage were putting on a show
Come on.
and not so much free thinking and hypothesizing at that time. They were speaking toward what they just got the power to do in that executive order, which is why they were speaking the quiet part out loud.
No, they were
That's-
certainly speaking the quiet.
Wow,
part.
did the New York Times cover that? I don't think they did. No, you heard it here on Grand Theft World. Let's play that clip.
All right.
Why don't we blow the system up? I mean, obviously, we can't just turn off the spigot on the system we have and then say, hey, everyone in the world should get this new vaccine we haven't given to anyone yet. But there must be some way that we grow vaccines mostly in eggs, the way we did in 1947.
In order to make the transition from getting out of the tried and true egg growing, which we know gives us results that can be, beneficial. I mean, we've done well with that, to something that has to be much better. You have to prove that this works, and then you've got to go through all of the clinical trials, phase 1s, phase 2s, phase 3, and then show that this particular product is going to be good over a period of years. That alone, if it works perfectly, is going to take a decade.
There might be a need or even an urgent call for an entity of excitement out there that's completely disruptive, that's not beholden to bureaucratic strings and processes.
So we really do have a problem of how the world perceives influenza, and it's going to be very difficult to change that unless you do it from within and say, I don't care what your perception is, we're going to address the problem in a disruptive way and in an iterative way, because you do need both.
But it is not too crazy to think that an outbreak of a novel avian virus could occur in China somewhere. We could get the RNA sequence from that, beam it to a number of regional centers, if not local, if not even in your home at some point, and print those vaccines on a patch and self-administer.
They self-administer. They use
That
those
reminds
micro.
me when Anthony Fauci
Do you remember those
is sitting
micro
there saying-
needles? Go ahead, pull it. Remember the patch that came out? It was like, I don't know, Bill Gates or somebody like that. They had like this patch, and the patch would administer through micro needles into your skin the vaccines and stuff like that. So those guys were talking about it while it was going on live. Wuhan had already ordered new air conditioning and air processing systems. They had already had the accident. They had already locked down. They already had 6 scientists. And it had already happened a couple months after Fort Detrick was forced to close because they were working on things off their books. That's from July 2019, August 2019 stories from the United States side. So when you start putting things together, it looks like maybe they take a BSL-4 virus they're not allowed to work on. They send it over to Wuhan that only has BSL-3 safety. And they're like, we'll beef up the safety, but then the bioweapon leaks out at a convenient time when they're not just having that conference, they're having Event 201, and they're also having the military Olympics over in Wuhan, right? Like there is a whole perfect storm while they're launching their project that they're like, we're not launching a project. This is just an exercise.
And that's 3 months after Kerry Mullis, the inventor of the PCR test, when he somehow passed away.
August 2019. After he said PCR is no way to test for these things because you could falsify it if you just run it more cycles, and then people started to figure that out, and then they got banned from being online and talking about it. And also the ability for people are, first off, you have a large Christian audience in America. Christians are very forgiving. In fact, it's the only one of the 3 major religions that has a whole philosophy based around turn the other cheek, and and what were Jesus's last words? Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do. Right? So it's this super open for abuse if you don't learn to stand up for yourself type of situations. And we were definitely all put under the abuse jackboot of they, them, those who can easily be seen doing it in their own words as they did it. How many clips do we have where we played Bill Gates bragging about the vaccines? And then later he's like, well, the vaccines, you know, we knew they didn't work. And this has really opened the way for aerosol vaccines or whatever the next mRNA technology they want to put in your body. And then later claim license over, because if their patented stuff's in your body, they must own you. Does Microsoft have some sort of cryptocurrency use people as a biological mining facility? Yeah, they do. And they put it out. They had the balls to put it out during the pandemic. That was like May of 2020. And
with 666 in the patent number, of course.
Yeah, with some zeros in there. With some zeros. They put some zeros in and make it clever. But it's like, if you don't have this consistent timeline and evidence, think how useful it is now. If you are a member of the GTW community or even just an avid listener of this podcast, think how much more cogently, clearly, and concisely you can communicate your points to your family, your coworkers, whoever's arguing with you because they saw something on CNN or MSNBC. You have the ability to just find the clip now. You don't have to be like, let me get back to you next week and I'll find that GTW clip in the middle of that 7-hour episode, somewhere in the middle of those 200 episodes, right? That's a task. You'd probably have to schedule a half hour to do that in your schedule, and it's not going to get done. But when it's like someone says something at the table and you're just quiet for a second and you search it up, and then you can be like, boom, that's communication right there. And it's actually, that's like the whole point of making media, is so people can bring it to other people when they need that information.
And then I would say take it a step further. If you find yourself in a situation like that where, you know, you just drop the mic in front of the family at Thanksgiving or something, now take the additional step of exporting that clip and put it on social media, because now I'm sure other people will benefit from that information being out there. So just blast it out there, you guys. That's what this is all about. Get this show in front of as many people. Like, it just baffles me that this particular show isn't as big as like a Russell Brand show. Like this, like, you know what I mean? Like just blast this information out there. Let's overwhelm the system with this information.
Well, I'm always happy with the size of audience I have at any given time.
Fair enough.
But if I step back and say there's 8 billion people on this planet, how many people should know this type of stuff? How many people would have had their freedom during the last 4 years instead of just finding out last week they took a medical invention that they weren't told about? And now, you know, my family went to a funeral this week of a guy who's younger than me, and he's got a beautiful family and kids, but he dropped dead of a massive heart attack, and I'm pretty sure he had to take a vaccine to go continue his job and these sort of things, and that's cruel and unusual. And how about these kids that were put through those years of wearing masks, and now their social skills are all messed up and stuff like that? It's like, thank you, Dr. Fauci. Thank you. Because while I would ask you the question, if I was in Congress, I don't want to be in Congress, but if I was there, I'd have said, Dr. Fauci, so no one plays with them. They're all just like either for him or against him, right? I'd get in there and say, Dr. Fauci, you served the American public during the pandemic, and you served courageously. Did your actions lead to saving people's lives? Well, yes, you know, how many lives, right? And at what point during your decision-making process did you weigh the deleterious effects on removing people's freedom, making them feel helpless, putting them in fear, cutting them off from their loved ones, telling them they can't go outside, etc.? When did you weigh the values of that and how many people you might hurt? And then I would expose that though you might have meant well, Dr. Fauci, that's what we call an invalid ethic. You meant well, but your actions fucked up more people than you could have ever helped. And there's no way to prove that you helped those people that you claim to have saved. But we can tie the actions, not just of Fauci, but of Daszak and EcoHealth and the government that all let this happen. And everyone turned their head and said, just give me the money. Free. They stole trillions of dollars right in front of the American people. That's why this show is called Grand Theft World. They didn't just steal our country. They're stealing the whole planet. They're in the middle of stealing everybody's future. And this is what we're doing about it. So yeah, sometimes I'm surprised we don't have more people watching, but those who care show up, and that's who I care about. So, and come
100%. Yeah.
Come to town hall on Tuesday. We're going to have a laugh riot talking about this stuff.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happen. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.